Hey there, welcome back to the podcast. We're back from break. I had a lovely Christmas and New Year's. How was your guys's? Briefly, good.
Was good.
Great.
Some time off school was well taken for both Kirby and I. I know.
Yeah, sure.
Whoa, he said briefly.
That was a
You're
lot.
past your you're past your time limit here. Buzzer rings. Tonight, the Blazers beat the 7-31 New Orleans Pelicans. Pretty much crushed them. Ended up winning by 19, but it was like a 30-point game at one point. Jaden looked good. Simons looked good. Advia looked good. Aiton looked good. I will say, Colton, Aiton has looked a lot better the last month or so, maybe month and a half. And so has Simons, particularly the last few weeks. But we have a lot to talk about the last few weeks since we haven't been on. There's been a lot of stuff happening, like you said, Colton, including a game winner from Scoot.
Yeah. Yeah, like you said, a lot of stuff to talk about. The team has had some ups and downs, but there's been some good flashes in the stretch. You've seen Anthony Simons play good ball, whether that's, most likely trade value related positive for the Blazers. He's had some good games, and credit where credit's due. When he plays poor, we will say it like we did before. He played really good, efficient basketball. He played really well last game. He had what, almost 40 points and 9 assists, but he had that crucial turnover at the end of the game, right? Aiton, he's been playing well, right? You went down the line. My guy for most of the season has been Denny. Denny got off to a rough start to the season. The play style that I was harping on in the offseason, the guy that I was excited to acquire, he has brought the energy and effort all year since the after his rough start to begin the year. He has been the Blazers like most consistently high energy, high effort, fun to watch
Maybe
player.
best player,
Maybe best
honestly.
player. Yeah, and so I just love what I'm seeing from Denny. He's been awesome out there. Put up another great line tonight. Efficient scoring, does a little bit of everything out there. Plays great defense, just all over the floor. Going to
Can
be a
shoot.
great piece moving forward. Can shoot. Can play
The
defense.
shot has come around, which is nice because he really struggled to start the season with the shot, and it's good to see it start
You
going
knew
in.
it was a matter of time, and from last year at least. And the best part about all of it, he's young. He's younger than Tumani Kamara, and his contract. Like, what more can you ask for? It was a great move by Joe to get him. It was all part. You can lump it as all part of the greater Damian Lillard deal because that was part of the assets that were moved as well. And Kamara had a good game as well.
I
Shaden,
want to
he
quick thing about Denny before we continue. I almost feel like I'm changing my mind that the players that the Blazers need to trade are Aiton and Simons to Grant might be the guy that needs to go because that frees the way for Advia and Kamara, who are clearly the wings of the future for the Blazers. And Simons has started to fit in well, and Aiton, it's like Klingon's not quite ready, so maybe holding on to Aiton, but I think that order has shifted around a little bit for me just because of the play of Denny and Tumani and the energy and defense that they bring. Continue though.
That shocks me. That's shocking.
Let
That's
me
a
weigh in on that real quick because I
Go ahead.
definitely I hear some things there that I agree with. I saw actually an article came out yesterday, I think, saying that the Blazers have solved their Anthony Simons problem, that he actually is fitting in with this team now. And it was an interesting article, but I still found myself not quite agreeing with that take because I think he is fitting in better. I think that it's fine for this year. I mean, if we think we might be able to get better value for him next year, over this offseason rather than pre-trade deadline, maybe that's the way we go. It does seem like maybe they've figured out some of the minutes problems where both Anthony and Scoot are playing a good amount right now, and it's okay. But my problem with Anthony, I still have some issues with him. One of them being that I just feel like he slows down the game too much for where the rest of the team's at. I mean, he does that thing. Kirby and I have talked about it a lot but where he brings the ball over half court. He must be the player in the NBA who gets the ball over half court slowest. I can't imagine anyone else takes until we're at like 16.1 seconds on the shot clock every time before he crosses the
Braun.
court. Yeah, probably
Braun's
him
the
and
only other
Braun.
one.
But then he just like pound dribbles for the next, what do we have left at that point? You know, yeah, 16 seconds. So
12
he pound
seconds.
dribbles for 14 seconds of that, and then just like takes the worst step back three. And sometimes he doesn't. Sometimes he actually moves the ball a couple of times. Sometimes he drives and it works. But when he does that horrible thing and he
Yeah.
takes that step back three, which is like the hardest shot in basketball, and it just clangs and it's a long rebound and the other team gets it and goes is off to the races. That really hurts us, and that hurts all the other guys' opportunities to get shots. I don't like him as a point guard. I still just don't like him as a point guard. I
What's
don't
so
like him as a
frustrating
decision
about
maker.
that too is he's proven that he can run offense every once in a while because he will go in there and come off a screen and make like a play or get a wide open look. And then like every other play, he goes back to the pound dribble. 2K is glitching mode where you're calling for the ball for your teammate and he won't freaking pass it and he waits till the shot clock runs down and chucks it. Sorry, Riley, continue.
No, yeah, that's pretty much you nailed it. That's what I was gonna say. It's just yeah, he has the ability to, when the ball's moving, it's a lot more fun. But what I'm seeing is that Scoot is more likely to move the ball. He's more likely to set things up. And whereas Simons is really hit and miss. Sometimes he does, but it's really dependent on other people like setting good screens or making good moves. And if he has his druthers, it seems like it's the isolation step back three, which I could not give less of a crap about watching a team take 13 step back threes a night. It's the most boring form of basketball. And
Sounding like Charles Barkley over there.
yeah,
That's
no,
the
I
crap.
completely agree with the inside guys on that. The just boring three-point shooting back and forth, sideline to sideline. It's got to change. It has to if the NBA wants to succeed in the future. And that's just part of it. That's one other part of it is just isolation step back threes. The step back three is a relatively new thing. They called it traveling up until about 6 years ago, and now it's not traveling anymore, and people do it, and it's cool sometimes, but I don't want to see it 20 times a game from your point guard.
One thing we just watched, Riley and I just watched the Thunder at the Cavaliers, two best teams in the league, or at least the way they're playing right now, both like 30 wins, five, 5, 6, 4 or 5, 6 losses or whatever, two great teams. They're doing a lot of mid-range. You got Shea, who's a mid-range master, Mobley, who can go inside and play inside and also hit the mid-range. Allen's an inside player. Obviously they got like shooters like Struess and Williams and those kinds of guys and Dort and those kinds of players who can hit the three, but they're more the complementary players. It's not just like give the ball to your star player and watch him dribble until he takes a step back three. I think there's maybe one player in the league that can make that work, and that's Luka. But because he does a million other things that are crazy, his passes and all that stuff, and also just his efficiency at that shot makes it effective. But yeah, it's not fun to watch. That game though, Thunder at Cavs, was very fun to watch. Those two teams playing some beautiful basketball, which was nice to see with all the talk lately about how it's not so fun to watch the chucking 53s a game.
Yeah, I mean, you stole my thunder. We'll get back to the Blazers in a
Under
second. Yeah, you
stole your
see?
thunder.
You see what I did there? You stole my thunder, but I'm not talking about them because give a shout out to the Cavs. What? Look at their record. I mean,
Yeah,
just look at it. Would you just
hard
look at
to hard to doubt him at this point.
I remember I brought it up. I think the last time we brought up the Cavs, they had like one less loss. And I was like, man, they're playing good. And somebody said, one of you
Me.
two, I remember it was like, I don't know, man.
That
And
was
I'm
me.
like, I don't know. They've gotten off to a pretty crazy start this time. Now it's even crazier. They've lost 4 games out of like 37 or something. What? That's
Yeah,
absurd. They're off to like a
32-4 right now. That's
32. Okay,
crazy.
so 36. They're
They're
off
on
to
track to win like 70 games though.
What are they going to beat Jordan Bull's record at this point? They could.
Warriors.
Yeah, it's the
Warriors.
Warriors.
Well, yeah, Warriors. I mean, so okay, we'll see what they do in the playoffs, right? I get it. They still have a season to collapse, but or a half season to collapse. But wow, that is crazy. Imagine being a Cleveland fan. Seems like it came out of nowhere as far as this level of dominance, right? I mean, they've always been like the middle of the East playoff teams. Whoa, that would be a fun season for them. Imagine being a Cleveland fan right now, especially after having to watch the Browns, right? I mean, jeez, dude, that's talk about a dumpster fire. Imagine being a Browns fan. We think the Blazers have it bad in a rebuild, and they haven't had it that bad.
Rebuilding for like 40 years.
Yes.
Through like two
Uh,
different
And they
iterations of
yeah.
the franchise.
and they gave Deshaun Watson $220 million after the lawsuits. Come on, guys.
Guaranteed, all guaranteed.
Yeah, all of it was guaranteed.
They didn't
And
have
he
to think about it. Yeah, anyways, but yeah, shout out to Cleveland Cavs because man, what a legendary season they're having. Who knows when it's gonna stop? They just beat the Thunder, the other
could
best
be
team.
the Cavs and the Thunder in the finals pretty easily. Like watching those two teams, obviously, like we all know it, and Mike Breen said it in the broadcast. There's 6 months of basketball to be played. A lot could happen there. Injuries being maybe the most, the biggest thing. If one of the two big guys, Mobley or Allen, goes down, or Mitchell or whoever, Garland, then it could change things for them. But right now, those look like the two best teams, and throw Boston in there. Obviously, they're tough. Although OKC just beat them pretty recently. But yeah, it's kind of fun this season how it's some teams you wouldn't expect or aren't normally at the top or at the top.
And it's interesting how they got to the top too. I mean, Cleveland especially, you kind of touched on it, Colton. It's not like they've been tanking for like 6 years and then they like totally retooled the roster and everything. It's really just been this like development over time. I mean, this last offseason when Donovan Mitchell was talking about leaving and then didn't leave and I thought for sure that was kind of a mistake, really on both of their parts. I was like, what, they're going to be the same team. They've been in the middle for a long time. That's like the worst place to be. What is Donovan Mitchell suddenly going to get better? I don't see that happening. Maybe their young guys will continue to develop, but I just couldn't imagine it was going to work out timeline wise, the dreaded timeline. But it seems to be working out just fine on the timeline. Those young guys continue to develop. They're on a totally different tier now than they were 2, 3 years ago. And Donovan's still balling out. He didn't even have a very good game tonight, and they
I
still
shot
they
bad.
still won. So yeah,
I will only, I will only slightly push back on what you said there because Mobley was what, the top number three overall pick? And then Darius
Maybe
Garland
4 or 5, something
was
like that.
like a top 10 pick, even higher than that, like top eight or something like that. So they had to tank to get some of their core pieces for their rebuild to start it, to get their core. And then they went out and got their third guy, and then they built around that. But you're right. Once they got their core, then they were just kind of hanging out, and then they went out and got the star. One of the teams that could have done something similar to that, but went out of their rebuild too fast, was the Portland Trailblazers when they had Damian Lillard and LaMarcus Aldridge. They were right there. They were very close, but they never made that move to get that third guy. Just want to say that one more time, if it didn't hurt us bad enough now. Uh, because it hurt bad then, right? It still hurts now, but I just want to the third guy. It's always the third guy, right? The third guy in this case is Donovan Mitchell, and he's been balling out for them all year. So, but Darius Garland was a guy that had question marks coming in, and I thought he's been underrated, and I've said that before. Um, but Mobley's really just that guy. And Jared Allen, I mean, also is another guy, I guess. But I don't know if Jared Allen, when you think of a that guy, is Jared Allen a that guy? I'm not
good
sure.
role player. That's how I always thought of
Good
him. I
role
always thought
player.
of like I would have loved him on the Blazers, especially like in the Dame era when we were trying to find size
Yes,
and stuff. I was thinking he would have
He
been
would have been a
awesome,
good partner for Dame for sure.
just like he is for Donovan.
100%. So speaking of nothing we've been speaking of, I want to ask you guys a question. A certain guy, back to the Blazers, does he even exist anymore? Because there's myths in the Pacific Northwest. There's like Sasquatch, things like that.
DB
Matisse
Cooper.
Thybulle.
DB Cooper.
Yeah, DB Cooper. Matisse Thybulle is just as mysterious as those
DB Thibault.
figures. What is going on? Sprained ankle? Still? Is that really what's going on? Have we maybe I just missed it. And that could be I just missed another update recently. Are we still out from a sprained ankle? Like
That's
Yeah,
what
he
the
was
injury report says.
he was
he had
ramping up
a
and
he had a major injury he was working his way back from, right? And then during his rehab, he sprained his ankle, and that's what they're saying he's out from. So it's probably kind of a combination of things. But yeah, January 7th, it says ankle.
yeah.
Also, what happened to Jeremy? It's just his face. I don't know what happened to him. He's been out for the tank, the classic face tank. My favorite all-time DNP was Manu Ginobili. He got like hit in the nuts, and the report just said, well, I actually don't think it said this, but I saw a meme or a tweet or something like that. It was like Manu Ginobili balls out for the face.
If you remember,
I think
NBA 2K had a like fake Twitter for a while, like probably still
Yeah,
does. And for a while, they would say like we could probably Google it and throw it up on the screen, but they would say like crazy things. It was like for two games in a row. It would be like Jimmy Butler got caught stealing from the National Bank, will be out for the next 2 weeks or something. It was so funny. But obviously they had to stop doing that because it wasn't,
they're disparaging these people. They're
yeah,
like
inflaming
insane.
people, it wasn't realistic, right? But
free speech, free speech.
yeah.
Community notes. Put it in the community notes.
Yeah, yeah, right. Moderation.
Yeah, if I remember right, I think the Manu Ginobili one, I don't remember. It was either testicles or scrotum. I think maybe it was scrotum because I think it like it tore or something like that. But
Yeah,
yeah,
I think he smashed it. I think it like
yeah,
popped or some horrible thing like that. It was like
yeah, yeah.
it was a gnarly sounding injury, but yeah, there was somebody had some fun with that. That was a long time ago. That was probably over 10 years ago. Um, yeah, so what we did miss these last few weeks, there was a Simon's buzzer beater, and then was it the next game or a few games later, there was a Scoot Henderson buzzer beater. And both of them were kind of funny because it felt like the team didn't really know how to celebrate. It's been so long since there'd been success with the Blazers and anything like in particular, Simons, his game winner over what game was that? Man, I'm blanking on the game. It was against Westbrook. It was against the Nuggets. He blew right past Westbrook and did his classic, bank shot that he does going downhill. And the team like didn't even believe that it was a game winner. They like thought he didn't get it off in time or something must have happened because the team like didn't even know how to react. And then a game later, Scoot or a few games later, I can't remember if it was the next game. Scoot hit the game winner and he was celebrating, but the rest of the team and there was a little bit more energy with that one, but there was like zero point 0.1 seconds left, so it wasn't a true buzzer beater. I don't think he got quite the kind of credit that he would have got if he would have hit it with double zeros, which is kind of dumb. I
Yeah.
saw like the headline on ESPN was like Henderson with the last minute shot or like the closing shot. It was like it didn't even say,
Late game, late
yeah,
game
late
shot.
game. It's
Yeah,
like, bro, it's a buzzer beater. You hit it with zero point 0.1 or a game winner at least. You hit it with zero point 0.1 seconds. Guess not a buzzer beater by definition, but yeah, both of those guys hit some game winners, starting to build some momentum potentially. And then yeah, beat Bucks in Milwaukee.
that was
Anthony
a Anthony
Simons.
late game winning
Yeah,
shot too. Yeah,
Anthony going 2-0 against Game Dalla since they broke up. And then close game in Detroit. Could have gone either way. Looked like down the stretch the Blazers, you know, could have won that game, but Detroit's playing pretty good too, so credit to them. And then tonight, absolutely manhandling the ravaged New Orleans Pelicans. They look pretty rough right now. No Zion, no Brandon Ingram. CJ was out there. I hardly even saw him. So they're starting to build a little momentum right now. They're 13 and 23, which you don't want a bunch of wins this year in particular, but it is nice to see these the young guys at least they're learning how to win. They've hit a few big shots in clutch situations. They've played a few games with leads now and held the leads. Those are kind of learning lessons and knowledge that you want on a young team.
This is the curve. This is the curve that you talk about. This is what you want. The young guys. When you look down the list and you see Tumani having a solid game, Denny having a great game, Shaden Sharp in the first half was going off. In the second half, he barely even didn't even need to do anything. He just took a back seat because he didn't have to. He took over in the first half. He had a buzzer beater going into halftime. Anthony with his efficient night. Scoot got room to play around. In the first half, Scoot was very efficient. Uh, if you just have good nights from those guys and you get a win, what more can you ask for? You're not going to win 50 games this season, but if you see growth from the young guys like this every once in a while, and then you see it more and more consistently throughout the season, even if it results in losses. Let's say we're the seventh worst team in the league, and the lottery gods just bless you. They bless the Hawks at like 11th or some crazy number, and you get an Ace Bailey on this team or something like that, or whoever it is. Well, then what are we doing? We're cooking, right? So you could be right there. If you add one more young piece, I mean, you count on down the line, you're like the Houston Rockets where they got all these young guys that are young and exciting, or the Thunder. You're starting to get those that like young stable of young guys, right? Count on
Speaking
it.
of, so we got the young stable, the stable of young guys. I think we all know the core, and we all know the
Yeah.
players that are probably likely to be traded, if not this deadline, then soon. Guys like Robert Williams, almost for sure. Probably Aiton, probably Simons, probably Grant. But out of those guys, who do you see most likely going at this trade deadline? We've got what, like a month and a few, maybe 5 weeks or something like that till the trade deadline. It's time to start looking at something. I remember last time we were on here, Colton, you said something about how this is the time to move if you're Joe. So something's gotta take place. Um, Otherwise it might be time to move on from him. Do you still feel that way? And if you do, which of those guys, and obviously it matters what you're getting back. Do you want I saw there was a NBA power rankings on ESPN today that I was reading, and it had like trades, like one trade idea for every team. And the Blazers, it was like who was it? It was one of those, I think it was, boy, I can't remember who the Blazers were giving up, but they were talking about bringing in Kevin Herter, who, like, he was saying to match salary for one reason, and he was saying that they have a lot of guards, but adding shooting wouldn't be a bad thing. So would you want a guy like that, like an established guy, or are you still looking more at like
Well,
picks and young assets?
well, I mean, so initially you give the face cringe when you say that, but then you think like, well, I kind of had that initial reaction when I saw the Denny trade. And then you kind of think about it for 10 seconds. Kevin Herter, I would have to see the trade. He is a big
Let me
guard
look.
and he's a three-point shooter. The Blazers don't have, you know, that many shooters, especially big shooters on their roster, right? I mean, I would have to see the makings of the trade, I think. But to answer while you're looking to answer, oh, go ahead. I mean, you can jump in
I was
really
just
well.
gonna kind of jump in and agree with you basically, and just say like with a position like that, like a shooter, I feel like the timeline stuff doesn't quite matter as much. We do need shooting on the team, shooting on the team that can last this year, shooting on the team that can last 3 years, shooting on the team that can last 5 years, whatever it may be. So yeah, I like the idea of getting shooting, and as we've talked about quite a bit on the podcast, like a big part of these trades are just making room for the guys who we want to get the minutes. So, like I don't necessarily expect that we're going to get like a player of like a wing of the future, as we get rid of like Grant or Robert Williams. You hope you can get some value and hopefully in addition to some shooting, maybe get some picks of some kind. But Yeah, I'm not against the idea of just bringing in some shooting so that hopefully Scoot can learn how to play with shooters because he doesn't look like he's ever going to be a shooter. It just doesn't look like that's in the cards for him, which is okay.
Maybe.
But you know, you
He's a
need
good
to learn
free
how
throw
to play with
shooter,
shooters.
right?
Yeah, I don't know if I agree with that necessarily. I think he could still develop that shot. It's
It doesn't
He's
look
a
very
good,
he's
good to me right
he's
now,
young.
but yeah.
he's a good.
But they were very unspecific with this. I found it. It was Kevin Pelton. He said, if the Blazers trade one of their veteran starters, Jeremy Grant or Anthony Simons, expect them to target players who can help now rather than draft picks. That approach paid off with Denny Advia, who's been Portland's most efficient perimeter scorer after being acquired on draft night for 2 first-round picks, which I was it 2 first-round picks? I thought it was
It was
Bradley
this
and
year's for it was this year's 14th, and then the future, but the future one that was like the lesser. We keep the one that's the better like alternative swap with Milwaukee, right?
And
So
then he finishes saying, as flush as the Blazers are with young guards, they could stand to upgrade their shooting by adding a player like Sacramento's Kevin Herter as matching salary in such a trade.
so
So,
I,
so
yeah, okay.
because those guys are so highly paid, you're probably not really going to be able to just get young prospects and picks. You know, you got to match salary. And so that kind of makes sense that you'd bring back a guy like that. But I mean, he's bigger than Simons and has a little bit different skill set. So there's a chance he might fit in
Yeah.
better than Simons.
I would just say, in my opinion, this is like my philosophy on something like this. I wouldn't give up long-term assets for like a one-way player. So like you wouldn't give up like a future part of your team or like a first or anything or like core part of the core or a young guy for a shooter player, like if it's like a Jeremy Grant or something like that, like just to get a Kevin Herter back, like are you getting like like Jeremy Grant and Kevin Herter, Jeremy Grant for Kevin Herter in like seconds, like that's gonna make
Yeah, I
people,
don't like that
you know what
either.
I mean? Like, what is what? I think you got to get a first in that deal just for the
Yeah.
sheer player downgrade. But so here's the thing. To answer your question about what you asked me about Joe Cronin, I do think teams around the league are finding that when they're good and at this cap, the apron that has been created, it is hard because you can't aggregate player salaries like you could before, right? So they're finding it really hard to make deals. Also, Miami, I'm laughing at you because Jimmy Butler is
I knew
doing
you
the
were gonna
same thing. We haven't talked about it, but ha, take that.
I knew
Also,
I literally thought of you when this whole thing came out. I was like, I love how Colton used to be a Heat stan, and then all this stuff happened with Damian Lillard. Now you just take the utmost pleasure in their misfortune. I'm here for it. I like that.
yeah. So, anyways, that just we can talk about that in a second. But yeah, I think that Joe, I really just want him to clear some space. I'm not expecting him to shed all those guys. Like, let's deal Ant, Jeremy, Robert Williams, and like and Ayton. Get rid of them all at once. I don't expect that or think that's even realistic at all to do that all at once right now. I mean, would I like maybe two of those moves? That would be cool. Would I expect at least one? Yes. I think at minimum, and I don't think it's like if all he does is trade Robert Williams, I'm gonna be like,
That's the
really?
easy one.
That's
That's the
Yeah,
one that's going to be easy because
that's the
everyone
one that everybody
contenders want him, and he's
contenders are gonna want him. So can he get rid of one of those other three guys? And then does Robert Williams go for a first or something? Like, does he do that kind of a thing where you get a young guy and a first in two different deals at this deadline? If yes, I'm going to be jacked because going down the line, you've still got, and then I'll pass it off to Riley. You've still got, I think, two future firsts that aren't the Blazers and two swaps. So then you're getting another young guy and then another first along with those other assets and then your own picks. So it's like you can just see it kind of coming together with the young guys still that you already have. That's the vision. You can kind of see it coming into place. It just takes a second. Go ahead, Riley.
especially with the way they're playing lately. That's with
Yeah.
the way the young guys are playing lately. That makes the vision a little bit clearer.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the smartest thing, and I know a lot of this, it just depends. I'm not saying this is what has to happen, but what I'd like to see happen, kind of going back to Kirby's original question of what do you see happening, what's like best case scenario. I think, as we've all said, Robert Williams is kind of like the honeypot here, right? Like he's the one that's pretty easy to get to move. We're probably going to be able to get, a lot of teams interested. A lot of teams could really use him. So I think if you can, you use that to try to package in one of the other guys too, so that we can move two of them. And maybe you have to get a third team involved. Maybe one team doesn't want both Robert Williams and Ant or Jeremy. But I feel like if you get a third team involved, you should be able to make things work. And I think that's what you should try to do because if we just move Robert Williams and then we're stuck with like the three biggest contracts with guys that other teams might not necessarily want, and you don't have anybody to try to package in anymore, I think we might regret it. Like if we just move Robert Williams and nobody else, we might be kind of in trouble. So I think you have to try to attach at least one of them to him, and try to get it all done at once. And I'd love to see that done by the trade deadline, this trade deadline. And that's probably all we're gonna get, I think. I don't see us like moving all four of them or three of them. But if we could move two of them, I think that's how it's going to go down.
I do feel like now is the time to move Simons because he's looked so much better the last few weeks. He's hitting game winners. He's going off for 35, 40 points a game. He's hitting 8, 9 threes in games. His shooting percentages are skyrocketing. He's starting to show, flashes of what he looked like a few years ago when his value was way higher. And I don't know if he'll ever get back to that value because of the lows that we've seen him at. But if he continues this and gets those numbers up and plays like this for a few more weeks, this might be the time to do it. Just don't know if it's gonna like, especially with tanking obligations. I don't really know if like this off season his value is gonna be any higher than it would be within the next month. He probably won't there's a chance he might get some more numbers up, some more impressive shooting performances, but more than likely they'll be sitting him, for the last few months of the season like they have been every year. So I would say it's probably try to trade him. Jeremy Ayton could probably stay because if Williams goes, then you're down to two bigs pretty much with Ayton and Klingon. And I like Klingon, but he I don't think he's enough to like hold it down as the only, legitimate big man on the team. Although that might give him plenty of run and you can really see what you got in him. But as crazy as I thought I'd say, it might not be the time to move on from Aiton right now. I don't know. Especially because he has looked considerably better the last month or so. He's looked for the first time since he's been on the Blazers like professional basketball player.
And maybe like he kind of is, I don't know if he's having more fun or what, but it kind of looks like he's actually playing and he's showing up and he's trying. He's trying the hardest I've seen him try. I got to give him that.
Hmm. Interesting.
No one's
Okay.
asking him to shovel snow, so
Well, we'll take all that into my mind bank for now. I'll just let that sit for now. Uh, I just want to, because we're here, because we talked about it, I just want to just keep talking this into existence. I'm looking at a certain basketball team. I'm just gonna keep bringing it up. I'm going down their three-point shooting percentage.
who could this be?
And man, they need three-point shooting so badly out of their rotation guys, dude. They just need it so
They're about
badly.
to get back their star player for a
They're
playoff
about to
run
get
here
they're in like they're competitive in the East. They're like a top four
without
seed,
their
but
two best players right now.
outside of a guy named Corey Joseph and Trevelin Queen, they really do not have any shooters really shooting over 36% from three. I really think they could use Anthony Simons. So,
Every
being
little thing
from
she does
Orlando,
is magic.
yeah.
We're talking about the Orlando Magic in case anybody
Oh,
hasn't filled in that here. Bolton
I'm
wasn't
just
explicit about it, so
I'm just saying, the Orlando Magic, hometown kid.
I
So,
that's
Florida teams are always fun to touch on because we got another one to touch on too. That I already mentioned briefly.
That's
Yeah.
just the Orlando Magic is kind of who I was thinking of when I was thinking about maybe getting a third team involved. I don't think that's necessarily like the team that needs someone like Robert Williams the most. I mean, they probably take him, but I think he needs to go to like a contender, and I think that's probably what would make him happiest. And there's a lot of teams that need him. But if you were to bring in like a third team that's trying to ramp things up, getting some better shooting,
Yeah.
they've probably got some assets. So
I
Yeah.
wonder if the Thunder would be interested in Time Lord backup
Oh, I
big,
bet they would.
but they
especially
would.
with Chet's problems, and they got all the assets in the world to be able to get him for a nice healthy price for the Blazers. So I don't know if the Blazers would be able to get back. Probably none of those rotation guys. They're probably not getting back a Joe or a Wiggins or a Wallace, but they might be able to get a nice pick of some kind. I'm sure the Thunder still have all those picks stashed, and maybe another kind of one of their third tier guys who still look pretty decent. There's a few guys I can't. I was just talking about him earlier. AJ Mitchell, I think, is a guy who's shown some upside. He's a guard, but and like Jalen Williams or something. I don't know. There's a few options out there, and they might be a potential buyer.
Yeah. Yeah. You try and get one of those picks. They have too many. They're gonna have to do something with them. So yeah, I think that's a good move. I think the next video we do should maybe start opening up the trade machine, seeing what we can come up with, do a little Sir Trades a lot, Sir Mix a lot, and see what we can figure out.
Every little thing she does is magic.
Yeah, again, we're almost out of time here, but briefly touch on the Heat again, the Jimmy stuff. We kind of hinted at it, but just to bring it out to light as as guys who kind of like the Heat before all that nonsense with Dame, and then that squarely turned us against them. It's pretty satisfying to see that team just crumble down and just unnecessary drama after unnecessary drama on that team right now.
Just really handled by a bunch of grown men who are acting like they're about 12 years old.
Cathartic.
All right, guys, thanks for tuning in. I hope we'll be back to regular scheduled programming. That's our plan. See you guys next week. You'll find out. We will too. Bye bye.